just want to thank you.
I just want to thank you this morning because you've been a very good audience. A lot of really important things you've heard today, a lot of different areas that our collaborative is working on. And one thing I just really want to say is that I don't think any of this work that we do collectively could be done by any individual group. There's a number of us that come together with different expertise. As Karuna said, there's many degrees in the group, there's nonprofits in the group, and we all come to the table with different skills and expertise that collectively have been really making some progress on this work the last half a dozen years, for sure. So I just want to lift that up. You're probably wondering about the topic today that I'm going to talk about. I could talk about a lot of different things, and there's a lot to talk about on this topic. I'm going to really try to stick to the water issues just because of time today. But I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about a newly proposed project in the state of Minnesota where a company from Iowa, Summit Carbon Solutions, is proposing to build a CO2 pipeline in a 5-state footprint. So it's North and South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. Right now, currently in front of the Public Utilities Commission, we have an application for a portion of that project. It's the Fergus Falls to Breckenridge or Ottertail to Wolfgang County branch. It's 28 miles. But the full project, as proposed by Summit Carbon Solutions, is much larger. And there's several groups that are coming together to work on this. It's an interstate project, and there's many different perspectives for the people that are coming to the table with concerns. I jumped too far. So the map here talks a little bit, there's some details about the project. So the company itself is touting this to be the world's largest interstate CO2 pipeline. If it's built, it will be over 2,000 miles, and in Minnesota, roughly that's about 240 miles. There's 3 potential lateral branches. As I mentioned, the first one is just 28 miles, and it's Fergus Falls to Breckenridge. The next main branch starts in Kaneohe County in Atwater at the Bushmills plant, and it goes all the way to the Iowa border. And it connects to the main trunk of the proposed pipeline here in Iowa. And there's 6 ethanol plants currently in Minnesota that they're trying to add to this project. There was another project that was being proposed at the same time 2 years ago, and that project was the Heartland Greenway project, and it was by Navigator. And we found out in October that Navigator decided they were not going to continue to pursue this project. It was not viable for them. So the Summit Midwest Carbon Express, its plan is to take the carbon and they're going to bring it down to Iowa. This red line is the main trunk, and they're going to send it to Bismarck. Actually, it's just southeast of Bismarck near the Bakken oil fields to sequester it and put it in the ground is what it's proposed to be done. The Navigator project was going to go to Illinois. So that's just kind of a brief overview of the project if you're not aware of it. This project is targeting ethanol plants, and the reason for that is because when we look at CO2 emissions and how they contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, the CO2 from ethanol is a pure form of CO2 because it's from a food base, right? So we think about in Minnesota, the other places that we generate a lot of CO2 are steel making, cement making, fertilizer plants, and sugar beets. So those are in Minnesota, for us, those are the companies or industries that generate the most CO2. Out of all of those, it's been determined that not only is the CO2 from ethanol the most pure form of CO2, but it's also able to be captured in a contained space. Capturing CO2 from a smokestack or a point source is not very efficient, and it's very difficult to do. But with ethanol plants, they capture it in the fermenting vat. So it's in a contained space, so they have a greater capture rate and efficiency with the process. I'm not sure, but it's not wanting to move. Oh, yeah, we'll go back one. Oh. So when I talk about water, this project's been on the books for about 2 years, and the company itself has never built a pipeline before, and they've never done this carbon capture process before. And in the public meetings, we've been pushing them really hard to understand how much water is going to be used to facilitate the carbon capture process. And this is what I really want to share with you today, because we already know that making ethanol is pretty water intensive, growing corn is water intensive. So the industry tells us that it takes approximately 3 to 3.5 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of ethanol. So if you look at the grid here, these are the plants in Minnesota on the very far left. And then the second column is what they have on their website is their ethanol output. So the Green Plains plant, which is the only one in that northern branch, they currently put out that they are generating 55 million gallons of ethanol per year. So if we just do the math, that means they're using 165 to 192 million gallons of water a year just to make ethanol. So if we add the carbon capture process to that, the industry, I don't think they really know, to be honest. But what they're telling us in the public hearings is that you can double that water use to add the carbon capture onto the process. So instead of 165, we're looking at more like 330 to 385 million gallons of water a year for just that one plant. If you take the footprint currently in Minnesota, which it potentially is going to expand because Summit Carbon Solutions is in the process of acquiring the POET plants, and we have one just over the border near Ortonville in Big Stone County, which would be South Dakota, that impacts, aquifers they don't observe political boundaries, right? So we share aquifers with South Dakota and we share aquifers with Iowa. And so if you really think about Iowa, if you remember the map that I had, I would try to get to it, but I might not be able to get back to it. But they're on the other side of Iowa, there's 13 ethanol plants on the northern part of the state in Iowa that we share an aquifer with. And then potentially there will be some more on the Minnesota side as well. But if you look at the total amount, just the 6 plants that currently have contracts with Summit, this is how much water they want, of public water that's held in public trust, and in some ways they're not even getting the appropriate permits for it. In Minnesota, industries typically have to go through a water appropriations process through the DNR, but a lot of times industries find creative ways to get around that, and Summit's already started doing that. They've already approached municipalities for water, they've already approached the ethanol plants to ask if they can use their water appropriations, and they've also approached the Red Rock Water District, which services quite a bit of geography, a couple of these plants. And what we've learned from them, Dominic Jones is the manager of the Red Rock Rural Water District, is that he came last year in May when we had public hearings in Fergus Falls, and he testified in front of the PUC and said, we do not have this water. I don't know, you can build the infrastructure if you want, but there's not going to be the water to run that carbon capture process because we currently didn't even have enough water to serve our customers this last year because of drought. So pretty soon you're going to be choosing, do you want to give water to your rural communities for drinking water, or do you want to give your water away to industries that are paying very small amounts for these water appropriation permits and run out of water? So these are really important things that we want to elevate here. Again, it's very complicated. There's an awful lot of issues around this. CURE actually is leading the campaign in Minnesota, working with landowners, working with communities. This proposed footprint covers 10 counties in Minnesota that don't really have established pipeline corridors. The other thing I would just briefly tell you is PHMSA, which is the federal agency that oversees pipeline construction at the federal level. When this proposal for this build out of pipelines, because it's not just this project, with all the issues we're faced with greenhouse gas emissions and trying to meet climate goals nationally and globally, there's a lot of carbon credits and tax incentives, taxpayer money incentives available to these companies. And there's a rush and an urgency to address these issues. And in the haste and rush to do so, we just worry that public safety is an issue, because it is with this project. And then also the other factors, like how much water is it going to take, and do we really have the water to be building this kind of infrastructure? Because the companies aren't worried about the water. They get the tax incentives once they get it operational, and if they don't have water, they still have collected those 45Q tax credits. So mostly I'm going to try to just focus on the water issue today, but we have a website if you want to stop. Sarah's here, and we have a booth. There's some postcards. We have carbonpipelinesmn.org is under the CURE umbrella. There's videos there, and we worked really hard to base all the information we find there on science. And we've had professionals from around the country do webinars for us. That's all there, so you can get more information there. You can also get more information by calling me if you'd like. I just wanted to elevate this and put this on your radar because a lot of people don't even know that this project is happening. Sometimes we've heard from lawmakers in St. Paul, they think it's a local issue and it's not a state issue. But our water is a state issue. And there's a lot of things that we need to be thinking about probably in the next decade about Minnesota water and protecting it, because we've already seen industries want to take our water and ship it elsewhere. We've seen industries try to go after water for projects like this without maybe understanding the unintended consequences. And I think that's kind of been a theme today, right? Because a lot of times we do things maybe thinking we're addressing a problem or solving a problem in one way, but because we haven't thought through them all the way, they have unintended consequences or cumulative impacts that all of us in Minnesota have to deal with. So if you want to know more about the Carbon Pipeline Project, you can come see me.